Good morning, everyone. I'm Elaine Quilici, Senior Editor of Pharmaceutical Executive Magazine. I have the pleasure of introducing our first presenter of the day, GSK's Chief Executive Officer, Dame Emma Walmsley. Emma has been CEO and board director since April 2017. Prior to this, she was CEO of GSK Consumer Health, a joint venture between GSK and Novartis. She's been a member of GSK's corporate executive team since 2011 and began her career with the company in 2010 with responsibility for consumer healthcare in Europe. Last year, Emma was appointed the honorable title of Dame for her service to the pharmaceutical industry and business, and we're honored to have her here with us today. Before I hand it over to Emma, I'd like to ask the audience to post any questions you might have in the Q&A tab, and then we will address them following the presentation. So now over to you, Emma.
Thank you so much, Elaine, a big hello to everybody. Before I begin my presentation, let me just quickly refer you to our traditional cautionary statement. So we are at an exciting pivot point for GSK with our planned separation next year to create two new global companies, one in consumer health, the other focused on the development of new vaccines and specialty medicines. Both these companies will impact the health of billions of people over the next decade, and we believe will offer significant long-term value to shareholders. Nearly 4 years ago, I set out a new approach to tackle some long-spanning strategic challenges at GSK. And we did this by prioritizing, firstly, innovation, strengthening our pipeline and improving R&D productivity. Performance, sharpening commercial execution, refocusing our portfolio and driving cost discipline. And trust, being a responsible company for all stakeholders and retaining our leadership in ESG. And all of this underpinned by a shift in culture for more accountability and more ambition. And we've made really significant progress. Our pipeline is stronger, our commercial execution is sharper, and we continue to lead in many areas of ESG. We've increased R&D investment from £3.6 billion in 2016 to £5 billion in 2020. Hal Barron, our Chief Scientific Officer, has assembled a new team and put in place a new R&D approach focused on the science of the immune system, human genetics, and advanced technologies. Productivity improvements are increasingly evident, with 11 product approvals since 2017 and 9 pivotal trials started in 2020. And we have more than 20 assets in late-stage development with significant commercial potential. Our commercial capabilities have also been transformed. Under Luke Miles and Deborah Waterhouse's leadership, new and specialty medicines are generating around £10 billion in annual revenues, and vaccine sales are up 35% since 2017. And this progress has been anchored in an overall refocus of the business, prioritization of investment to key markets and growth products, and delivery of a major cost reduction program. Alongside this, and after 2 successful global integrations, we've also created a new world-leading consumer healthcare business with a radically transformed portfolio, and profits nearly doubled. All of this underpins the very positive prospects we see for both new GSK and new consumer healthcare. And we're looking forward to sharing the strategy and growth outlooks for new GSK, as well as further details on the separation with investors on the 23rd of June. And we'll be updating investors on the outlook for the new consumer company in the first half of 2022. So I am sure that everyone will understand today I am not about to preempt the details we're going to share in 2 weeks' time, but I'm sorry to disappoint on that. However, given the important focus of this forum and the tremendous work of the CECP and the Biopharma Sustainability Roundtable, I do want to take this opportunity to update you on our leading ESG approach and the importance of it to new GSK. We've long believed that strong ESG performance underpins long-term success and value creation. ESG-related matters reach into every corner of our business and touch every single person working at GSK. And so being an ESG leader will remain core to our approach as a new GSK. Delivery of significant health impact together with improved performance for shareholders will be a key goal for a new GSK, and a focused ESG approach designed to leverage our strengths, inform our strategy, and address the key challenges we face as a company over the long term is absolutely fundamental to achieving this goal. We see 6 areas on this slide that are material for our company to do this. Firstly, pricing and access. Addressing challenges around pricing and access is one of the most fundamental strategic challenges facing our sector, and we have to get this right to make our innovation available to patients and to create the economic returns required to fuel R&D and the next wave of innovation. The pricing environment continues to shift. This has been evident for a long time in the US and Europe, but we also see accelerating dynamics in other key markets, most notably China. Governments and payers are increasingly cooperating across jurisdictions to reduce the cost burden to health systems and introduce new measures to control growth in pharma spending. This can present volatility and risk to the industry, both short and long term, and has clear implications for how we price and make our products available. At GSK, we're responding on 3 levels. First, we are deliberately increasing our innovation focus on prevention as well as treatment. Prevention, of course, is increasingly attractive to payers given the cost benefit, and with better real-world evidence, it's ever more visible to them. Of course, I hardly need to say that the world has never been more aware of the value of vaccines. At GSK, we have one of the broadest portfolio of vaccines in the industry, covering all stages of life, and an industry-leading pipeline of new vaccines targeting diseases such as RSV, meningitis, influenza, as well as key resistant pathogens such as Clostridium difficile and Staphylococcus aureus. A clear focus for our development and commercial teams is then to demonstrate effective health outcomes and value for both our vaccines and new specialty medicines. For example, Cabenuva, the world's first and only long-acting treatment of HIV, launched this year, will radically transform the way HIV is treated by reducing treatment dosing days from 365 days to 12 days per year. Excitingly, this treatment also has significant potential as a preventative medicine. Secondly, a major part of our R&D approach is to improve productivity, thereby reducing costs and improving returns. And we're doing this by investing in human genetics to validate and prioritize targets more accurately. This is helping us develop more assets with a higher probability of success. And we're also targeting the very design of our products. For example, Dovato uses 2 medicines instead of 3, or Zejula for women with ovarian cancer, where 1 medicine can be prescribed instead of 2. Reducing our R&D costs in these ways and many others improves our economic returns. And in turn, this gives us more room to be flexible on pricing. And thirdly, we make our products affordable and available through responsible pricing approaches tailored to the market context. In developed markets, we apply a value-based approach. In lower and middle income countries, we operate and long have a tiered pricing approach, coupled with flexibility on IP in certain circumstances, together with specific access programs. In these markets, alongside providing obvious payer and patient benefits, we see these access models as long-term investments in growth, presence, and sustainability of our business. Let me give you just 2 quick examples. Gavi's Advanced Market Commitment, AMC model, has allowed us to make long-term capital investments to introduce and rapidly scale up access to new vaccines that might otherwise have taken years to reach children in low-income countries. And we are one of the largest suppliers to Gavi through this model, supplying more than 850 million doses of vaccines since 2010. Meanwhile, voluntary license agreements mean that more than 16 million people living with HIV across 113 developing countries now have access to a dolutegravir-containing product. This allows our innovation to reach people in low and middle income countries while protecting our profitable business in markets where affordability is less of a challenge. The success of these approaches is reflected in GSK's continued leadership of the Access to Medicines Index, which we have topped 7 times. Looking ahead, and knowing that new GSK's portfolio of vaccines and specialty medicines will expand, we're already working on new access models and new solutions. And I'm really confident that with our experience, you're going to see us continue to rise to the challenges of pricing and access in a way that supports patients, payers, and the delivery of long-term shareholder value. We remain strongly committed to using our scientific expertise to discover new medicines and vaccines for diseases that disproportionately impact low and middle income countries. We've learned that to have impact in global health, we need to have a sustainable pathway for our innovation from lab right to patient, and to share the financial risk so our commitment to this area works for shareholders too. 2 years ago, we implemented a new strategic approach to our global health work, which brings scientific focus across both prevention and treatment together with financial discipline and long-term sustainability. And following these principles, we're putting our efforts into early stage research and development and now looking to transfer our innovation to other organizations with the right capability and the geographic reach in phase 2 development. For example, our new TB candidate vaccine was recently licensed to the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute as a great example of this. This benefits our global health work, and the benefits of it are really profound, positively impacting billions of people and clearly demonstrating how a business like ours can support social and economic development. The work also helps provide access and presence in frontier markets, and scientific advances in this space can be used to benefit our core business. For example, the adjuvant that was very first used for our malaria vaccine is the adjuvant now used in Shingrix and will be used in our very promising RSV vaccine. A major part of our global health work is oriented towards global health security, including pandemic response and preparation. Our response to COVID-19 has been across both prevention and treatment. Our adjuvanted vaccine partnership with Sanofi is in phase 3 trials and is targeting both original and South African COVID variants. We hope to make the vaccine available by the end of the year. We're also evaluating the potential for this vaccine to play a role in booster programs. And we have another vaccine partnership in phase 3 with Medicago, and pursuing a second generation COVID vaccine with our partners CureVac, which we plan to make multivalent. And we recently secured FDA emergency use authorization for a new treatment, sotrovimab. Whilst we have harnessed existing platforms like our adjuvant, we've also strengthened capabilities in monoclonal antibody development and mRNA. And we're invested in entirely new ones like this plant-derived vaccine technology. We also have very active efforts to improve future pandemic preparedness, whether that be joining G7 and industry leaders in a plan to develop and deploy high-quality diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines in just 100 days after a new pandemic threat is identified, or supporting exciting new collaborations like the Trinity Challenge, which has brought together world-leading organizations across academia, social, and private sectors to harness the power of data and analytics for better surveillance and to help protect the world against future health crises. Antimicrobial resistance is one such crisis and another really key area of focus for us. Without action, 10 million people could die from drug-resistant infections every year by 2050. It threatens much of the modern healthcare system, from routine surgeries to cancer care and hospital stays. It is in many ways a silent pandemic, but we know about it now, and it is a very clear and present social and business risk, which is why it's a critical part of new GSK's global health work. We have 28 R&D projects targeting priority pathogens including those deemed critical and urgent by the WHO and the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 15 of these relate to vaccines that aim to reduce infectious disease that would otherwise need to be treated with antibiotics. And beyond scientific innovation, we're focused on helping develop robust global antibacterial manufacturing practices and looking for ways to improve commercial incentives and stimulation of antibiotic research, such as with the new AMR Action Fund. This comprehensive commitment to antimicrobial resistance sees us lead the Access to Medicine Foundation's AMR benchmark. I strongly believe in the power of diversity and the criticality of an inclusive workplace. It's important to me personally, and I want GSK to be a company where diversity of people and thought is truly valued. When we get this right, it strengthens our performance, our recruitment, and our retention, and it brings us closer to the needs of patients and customers. Our commitments at GSK include diversity in clinical trials and how we represent diversity in our marketing, and a fundamental commitment to equity in our employment practices. We've made significant progress on gender since 2017. The percentage of women in management continues to rise. In fact, in 2020, we were proud to have achieved 48% global female managers and 38% of senior management roles at VP and above. So we've increased our aspiration to have 45% of VP and above roles female by 2025. And events last year spurred us, along with others, to question what more we can do to support equity in race and ethnicity. And we've taken action. This includes new training on unconscious bias and introducing targets for representation in the US and the UK. We aim to increase the number of ethnically diverse VP and above leaders to at least 30% in the US and 18% in the UK by 2025. We're also taking a long-term view on this, for example, by helping to strengthen young, Black, Latin, and female representation in STEM education initiatives in key locations that are close to our business. Science is always interconnected, and inclusion and diversity are critical elements for scientific progress. The new GSK, supporting both will be part of our purpose as a company. Together is how we get ahead of disease. Climate change is a focus for all of us, and we have ambitious plans to address our effect on climate change and the depletion and degradation of nature. Last year, we set industry-leading goals to have a net zero impact on carbon and a net positive impact on nature by 2030. Delivering these goals will help make GSK more resilient, protect our supply chains, and help us adapt ahead of expected regulation change. We've put in place annual targets along this pathway so we can drive tangible progress early on and course correct if necessary. And we've estimated that the potential financial impact of climate change and nature loss to our business over time could be significant in the form of taxes and regulation if we took no action. So as an early adopter of TCFD, we've used our analysis to inform our new targets, actions, and approach. For us, this is not only about the sustainability of our business. As the science makes very clear, climate change and nature loss are impacting human health. To make meaningful progress, we need more collaboration across industry, governments, and individuals. And that's why we chose to be a principal partner to COP26. We see COP26 as a pivotal moment and firmly believe our sector can help accelerate collaboration and momentum to net zero. Strong governance around products and high operating standards underpin trust in our industry. Quality and safety are paramount. Patients and doctors put their trust in us every time they take or prescribe one of our products. And investors trust us to disclose and report accurately when they look to manage risk appetite with their investment choices. We continue to perform strongly against safety, quality, and compliance measures, while simultaneously increasing productivity levels. We remain absolutely committed to the highest ethical standards on privacy, on data integrity, human rights, and in our sales and marketing. We have strong risk management processes in place. Commercial leaders are clear on their expectations and clear on the consequences of acting outside our code of conduct. We see high standards as core to delivering competitive performance. Based on learnings and changes in our portfolio, we've evolved policies on how we engage with healthcare professionals and how we incentivize and reward our sales forces, so we do the right thing and remain competitive, so that ambition is in patient interest. Of course, there are inherent risks in our industry, and the key litmus test is how you respond when things go wrong, as they will and have in any company of our scale. I believe that companies must respond transparently, taking full ownership and accountability and getting to the root cause of the issue. Accountability and doing the right thing will be key aspects of new GSK's culture and the way we expect everyone to work in our company. Accountabilities for each of the 6 focused areas I've outlined sit with respective members of my leadership team and are detailed in personal objectives. Individuals are therefore incentivized and rewarded for ESG delivery. For new GSK, we expect to strengthen the alignment of reward and REM to delivery on ESG and increase visibility of this for investors in our reporting. Board oversight for ESG is primarily driven through our Corporate Responsibility Committee, which has specific oversight of progress on ESG targets and the public trust commitments we've set out and against which we disclose progress every year. Investments to support sustainability are factored into our capital plans, and sustainability is part of new GSK's capital allocation framework. Looking at benchmarks, we currently have a leading position in many of the most important ESG ratings and indices, including those with specific relevance to our sector. And we have a clear aim to retain top quartile leadership in these ratings as new GSK. So in summary, strong ESG performance will be at the very heart of new GSK's purpose and a key driver of our goal to deliver health impact and shareholder returns, and be a company where their outstanding diverse talent can thrive. New GSK's ESG approach will be to primarily focus on the 6 core areas I've outlined today. We believe this approach will support delivery of sustainable performance and long-term growth, build trust with all stakeholders, reduce risk to our operations, and enable delivery of very positive social impact at scale. Our plan shows that new GSK can positively impact the health of more than 2.5 billion people over the next 10 years, protecting them and helping them recover from disease. I look forward to sharing more with you in 2 weeks' time of what we hope to achieve at new GSK and how over the next decade. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Emma. Before we begin the Q&A, we just have a brief poll that we'd like to ask the audience to take, and you can access that poll in the polls tab next to the Q&A tab. So now let's address some of the questions. Emma, how have you integrated ESG into company strategy, or do you see it as separate?
It's categorically not separate. It's absolutely core to our strategy and to our priorities. I mean, when I laid out the plans for GSK 4 years ago, as we went through this major transformation journey, one of the 3 priorities was trust, innovation, performance, and trust. And it's a Venn diagram. These are not separate, distinct teams. They are all interdependent. We've always believed at GSK in a multi-stakeholder world. We have long, as I hope I've evidenced today, set leading commitments in terms of access to medicines, our inclusion and diversity priorities, new pioneering environment goals. There are really clear accountabilities on my leadership team. We have clear board governance around ESG, and it's reflected in everybody's annual objectives and leaders' compensation. And really, we're very excited about the relevance of ESG being more broadly recognized by multiple stakeholders now, and it's going to be absolutely core to our new GSK, because it's very much at the heart of what being a sustainable company and a sustainably competitive and performing company actually means. It's not a trade-off. It's not a parallel team. It's actually about the mutual reinforcing interests of shareholders and society.
You just brought up, is it a trade-off? You know, that was another question we have. Do you see it as a trade-off between ESG and performance?
No, absolutely not. The opposite. I think it really is the definition of what sustainability means. And by the way, it's what our people expect. And I think that's never been more evidenced than in the last 18 months. And I think when you get it right, you are very much in a positive flywheel, particularly in an industry like ours, which is by definition long-term. And because of the patent model, you are looking to replace business. The complex questions of sustainability around both economics and social impact are incredibly interrelated. So no trade-off, massively mutually reinforcing, and we need to stop that false dialogue, I think.
Thank you. Somebody who was watching yesterday, our sessions, has a question. We heard yesterday a number of CEOs talk about diversity in clinical trial design. How does GSK think about diversity in the context of trial design? Does it have its trials mirror the diversity levels of the target population for the product? And if so, can you share an example about how GSK operationalizes this?
Well, I think it's a fantastic question, and I would start by saying, absolutely yes. This is something we've again long taken into account. We have a team. I won't say department because that makes it sound huge, but we have a team, very talented team who are dedicated to the diversity of clinical trials and have been for some time. That doesn't mean there isn't always progress to make. And again, we've seen painfully the disproportionate impact on certain communities of where COVID's hit. But let me give you, recognizing that different diseases and medicines can affect people differently depending on ethnicity, but also sex, race, age, all of these things. It's because of that, it's so important to get the real world disease population properly represented. And two examples I'd give perhaps. One is our study of cabotegravir for prevention, this truly pioneering HIV prevention medicine where trials were stopped because of efficacy performance, and there it was prevention in men who have sex with men and transgender women, and we had really strong diversity of participants on global scale in Argentina, Brazil, Peru, South Africa, Vietnam, and the US, and 2/3 of our study participants appropriately were under 30, 12% were transgender women, and half of the US participants identified as Black or African American. So in this case, a highly relevant population for a pioneering medicine. And then obviously one other area where this question has been of paramount importance has been through more recent COVID trials. So our antibody, I think in our trials we had over, which was just very recently had emergency use approval, had over 60% of people in the trial Hispanic, and I think 7% Black or African American, and obviously incredibly important when we know that there was 3 times more likely hospitalization, and I think 2 times more likely death in the case of COVID. So always more to do, but very much a relevant, visible question for GSK and part of our core commitments on this rightly hot and important topic.
Thank you. Can you share more about your response to COVID and lessons for the industry?
So our response was absolutely to deploy our technology and our science and our know-how in infectious diseases. And we looked at both, right from the beginning, both prevention with vaccines portfolio and treatments, as I've said. We sought, and again, obviously, when this was all beginning in January, and many of the new technologies had certainly never been approved in human beings, we sought to deploy our adjuvant technology, which was proven safe and effective and could be manufactured at scale. We sought partnerships with multiple antigen candidates, and we really looked at that because we were excited and thought it was important about the volumes that could be manufactured. And of course, our approach, like many others, was not to be profiting from this during the pandemic. And we, I know that if you are in the US or in the UK, there's a lot of confidence now because of the scale deployment of vaccines. But this challenge on a global level is very, very far from over. Just in terms of the distribution of vaccines, and we still have a lot to learn about COVID. So we're excited to be able to contribute, as I referred to earlier, both during we hope to get some approvals later this year from a vaccine point of view, and to be able to contribute also to the booster market, either with Sanofi or trials that are ongoing, or indeed with our second generation mRNA partnerships with CureVac. Lessons learned. I mean, there are so many, and we're all learning all of the time. I think just fundamentally, as a world leader in vaccines, we've never been more reminded there is not a family, company, community, or country who doesn't recognize the importance of vaccines and the benefit of prevention versus later intervention. This is a core portfolio to the new GSK. Our whole scientific approach is based on the science of the immune system, and we think we have an incredibly exciting pipeline that will also be able to take charge of the learnings the whole industry has had about new technology opportunities, but also what we can achieve when we partner effectively with each other and with regulators as well. And then I think there are a whole bunch of learnings that even beyond our industry, many CEOs will recognize on the way we lead, how we prioritize our people, how we communicate more effectively, how we respect and spend time much more with the front line, whether that be the people in our factories, in the fields, in our labs, how we inspire and motivate with purpose. That's what this whole conversation is about, and how we unlock culture change by focusing on what really matters. So, the list can go on. I think there are both learnings in leadership, learnings on the importance of purpose on our industry, and operationally, you can get into the telehealth question, how everything has been digitized. There are many things that we want to bed in so that we come back to a new better, not a new normal, but a new better as the world starts to open up, and that we never, ever let this have the catastrophic impact when it happens again, because it will happen again. That's one lesson I hope the world learns and our memories aren't too short.
Thank you. Some very good points there. Speaking of all those collaborations that we saw, through COVID-19, partnership between big pharma becoming a reality with COVID-19. Some examples our audience member gives is GSK and CureVac, J&J and Merck, Pfizer, Moderna, sharing manufacturing capacity to deliver and to supply doses to the population. Do you think this trend will continue in the future post COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been there. I think it's had extraordinary visibility, and I have been very proud to be part of this sector and stand alongside other CEOs and see what the industry has been able to contribute in partnership with governments and regulators, and where competitive elbows got out the way and people lent in against a kind of common enemy. But I think this is a sector, and where partnership has always been important, because innovation, no company can pretend they've got all the brilliant scientists in the universe inside their company. So it has to be externally oriented, and that's again another culture change Hal has been driving very hard in our R&D organization, to make sure as you think about growing your pipeline, you're constantly partnering. And I think you refer to manufacturing and supply chains. We've been delighted to step in to help, whether it's Novavax or CureVac, and many others have seen that in terms of supply. The resilience of supply chains and global supply chains is another aspect that's been quite tested through COVID. And I think partnerships matter, but recognizing the complexity, the technical expertise, and making sure we support the sustainability of our supply chains in the most meaningful sense is another thing to very much watch out for.
Mm-hmm. And how important is it to partner with companies, not just even supply chain, but all your vendors that have some of the same ESG issues in mind?
Well, it's a really important point, and I think that all scale companies will respond in similar ways in terms of taking our responsibility to recognise the full value chain. I mean, when you just look at the question of our environmental impact, the scope 1 and 2 is de minimis. It's really in the scope 3, starting to look at the sort of full life cycle of the use of our products, and really digging deep in the way we partner with suppliers for their sustainability. And partnership is not a facile word in that context. So again, I think this is all part of what we have to be able to achieve together. The modern way of working is always a collaborative approach, and again, I hope we learn the lessons from what's happened more recently.
Yeah. What more can we do to address the vaccine equity, as it is clear that none of us are safe until all of us are safe?
Well, I love this question. And again, the GSK, I think, vaccinates 40% of the world's children. And when you look on a volume base, not a returns basis, and through our contributions with Gavi, as I alluded to earlier, we have long been committed to the scale impact that you get from protecting people with vaccines. It is literally the biggest healthcare intervention for humanity since the discovery of and the distribution of clean water. I mean, it is foundationally important. There's obviously a debate, and it's ongoing at the moment, around IP on vaccines. I think my own view is we have proven quite clearly that we can drive access to vaccination through, as GSK does, tiered pricing, when appropriate, opening up IP. I don't think the access to vaccination is an IP debate at the moment. It is a manufacturing supply debate, it is a raw materials debate. And I think we need to be very careful about solving the wrong problem in that particular case. However, like everybody, I deeply, deeply welcome a more profound debate, including with the G7, G20 now, on our shared responsibility together to support access to vaccination for the world. And by the way, not just pediatric vaccination, but again, the opportunity in adult vaccination systems. And we've built up these systems now through the pandemic in some countries, and it will become more global, for systematic adult vaccination programs. Just imagine the positive impact we can have on our healthcare systems whilst our populations age and the economic burdens increase. If we can deploy adult vaccination prevention using all these exciting new technologies, and that's something that I think will, once we get to scale, after all this investment in vaccination, that's going to really help with the equity agenda. But I think it's something that companies, regulators, and governments must continue to keep high on their agenda.
So we only have about 5 minutes or so left. Let's see if we can get to a couple more questions. Does the pharma industry have a part to play in improving biodiversity? If so, how? Or are issues like biodiversity more relevant to heavily polluting industries?
No, I love, that's a great, I mean, this is an area that I think is highly relevant for us. And that's exactly why at GSK, as well as committing to net zero by 2030, we really wanted to put out a marker for being nature positive. And that is, I suppose, around three main areas. First of all, water, then material use, but also in terms of biodiversity. And that, I mean, of course, our sector is not a main pollutant and perhaps isn't as heavy in this space as many other, obvious contributors. But, if not us, then who? Everybody needs to be able to make a contribution towards this. And again, this is one of the reasons why we want to be part of COP26. I think the incredible link between climate change and the impact on the world's health is extremely important to understand, and that's where our industry can step forward, I think, quite powerfully, including on biodiversity, whether that's being about sustainable sourcing, deforestation agenda, and then, as I said, in terms of single-use plastics and making sure that we have good water stewardship in all of our sites and communities as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and it's important this sector steps up and shows how it can also lead the way, not least in infectious diseases.
Thank you so much. I think we're out of time. Emma, I want to thank you for presenting today. It's been very insightful. I don't know if you have any closing comments you'd like to share.
Just that I think the CCP does tremendous work. We're excited to be with you today, and really delighted that this agenda is getting so much more currency. I hope that keeps to accelerating when people's feel like things have got back to normal, and that we keep the long term and the multi-stakeholder world very, very much in mind.
Excellent. Thank you once again. And to our audience, I want to thank you for listening in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's presentations. You can join our next session. There should be a pop-up on your screen, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.